Hello, everyone. It is Kevin Henry. I'm the editor-in-chief for drbicuspid.com. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the drbicuspid.com podcast. We're continuing today the Cellerant CEO podcast series that we've been doing throughout the year. We're really glad to be partnering with Celerant on this and really excited today to have two gentlemen from the Dental Innovation Alliance joining us. So welcoming in Doug Brown and Thomas Sharpe. Gentlemen, how are you all today?
Doing great. Good to be with you, Kevin. Thank you for having us.
Likewise, doing very well. Thank you.
Well, glad to have you both on. I'm looking forward to learning more about Dental Innovation Alliance, its partnership with Celerant, and so much more. But before we dive into the subject for today, I'd love for our audience to know a little bit more about you. And Doug, would you kick us off with that?
Certainly. Well, I've been in the dental industry for about 30 years. Prior to that, I was in finance. Had an opportunity to jump into this very interesting and dynamic industry in the mid-90s when the consolidation of dental practices into DSOs and group practices was in its very early stages. So worked with a small group of 20 practices in the Southeast. After a couple of years, we merged with a much larger organization in the Midwest called Sears Family Dental. Then we merged with another group out in Texas called Dental One, and we became Dental One partners. And we had a variety of models, but successfully grew that business to about 160 practices. After about 13 years in the role of CEO of that organization, had a chance to go work with Affordable Care, which is affordable dentures and implants in North Carolina. Gave me a chance to reduce my travel because I live in Raleigh, where Affordable Care is based, and over 7 years as CEO, grew that business. A couple of very successful exits, and gave me a chance to get off the treadmill a little bit as CEO for 30 years and really spend time working with smaller businesses, all connected to dentistry, as an investment advisor, as a mentor. And I also serve on the boards of several DSOs and ADSO, an organization I helped found. So that's pretty much it.
Well, that's pretty good, I would say. So, Thomas, would love to hear a little bit more about you.
Sure. Yes. So by way of background, I'm an Oklahoman originally, so I had a lot of interesting rural jobs in my youth, and I formulated my work ethic there. But I've been in the dental industry for 24 years now. And so I have degrees in both business and law. So in year 2000, I graduated from law school. This is back in Oklahoma. And I entered into a small handful of dental offices, and we called this group DDS. And we built out the DSO structure around this. And so we grew it exclusively through a de novo process. And I like to say it's an overnight success story that took 19 years, but we got to a point in that period from 2000 to 2019, we got to 52 units total, and we're about 10 states wide. And so we were attractive to Affordable Care, and they made an offer we didn't want to refuse. And so March 1, 2019, we joined forces with Affordable Care, where Doug was, and they were backed by Berkshire Partners Private Equity at that time. And I joined the board of Affordable Care as a vice chairman alongside Doug. So we did governance items, but also executive projects like integration, digital dentures. So on that innovative side, you could already see that was part of the process. But that culminated in August 2021 when Berkshire Partners sold that group to Harvest Partners. And both sales I've been involved in have been records in the DSO space. And I like to think that is a testament to the models and especially the people who are executing those. So people first, innovative focuses, these have been a large part of my professional and personal life both. And now we're carrying that forward into Dental Innovation Alliance. As Doug said, we had gone along and kind of had different companies approach us. We invested in them, we mentored them, and we thought this would be just a way better thing to do with a bigger platform, a bigger apparatus for due diligence and support. So that's what the genesis for DIA was.
Well, glad to have you both on today. And Thomas, while you're on the hot seat, I'm just going to ask you the big question. So you mentioned a little bit about what Dental Innovation Alliance is, but what does it mean for dentistry moving forward? I'm curious for your thoughts.
Yeah, it's a great question. We get asked this a lot. And, you know, in a nutshell, we're propelling innovation. And we like to think we're doing this for the benefit of the dental industry at large. But we're also seeing ourselves as a rising tide lifting all the stakeholder boats. And so what do I mean by that? We have innovators, we have investors, we have end users of innovation, we have patients who benefit from this innovation. And then we like to count the dental industry overall as the fifth kind of stakeholder. And through our network, through our kind of brand and our process, we believe we're bringing a great benefit to all those parties. And so obviously dental technology innovation is something that is, it's actually a really frothy area right now. I didn't expect there to be this many companies when Doug and I began this journey. We have over 1,000 companies in our database, and this grows at about 30 to 45 new companies per month. So it's a great time to be involved in this. And there's a huge need out there in DSOs and private practice. You know, there's a need to be more efficient with the macroeconomic environment being what it is. There's a need to be doing more with what you have. And so dental technology unlocks a lot of that.
Doug, I'm curious, could you tell me a little bit about the relationship with Celerant, how that began and what that means for both Celerant and Dental Innovation Alliance as well?
Sure. Well, we somehow were introduced to Lou 18 months ago, I think, and we found that there was a tremendous amount of overlap between his consulting clients and our investor companies or our portfolio companies. And so he has been working for years with a number of companies and helping early stage businesses, both in the kind of SaaS space and also device space, both with their strategic approach and how they gain recognition in the market. And so he's a wise man who's a dentist, who is a good writer, who's very well connected. And as a result of that, he has been, very attractive to these young entrepreneurs and allowing them to get visibility to their products. So we said, hey, we're doing the same thing. We came later in terms of our platform. We're doing something very different. We're raising capital and providing capital to these small entrepreneurs. So they have both needs. How do they get visibility? How do they get sage advice? And how do they get capital? And then eventually, how do they get to an exit, a successful exit? And we think together with Lou and his fine team, we're better than separate. So we talk weekly and we share leads, and we share perspectives on our businesses, and we think everybody benefits through the relationship.
So Thomas, I'm curious, I've been in the industry 20 plus years, and it feels like there's so much outside influence now coming into dentistry, and it's really disrupting the way that we've always done things, which is not a bad thing at all. Don't get me wrong there. But I'm curious, how do you see the disruption of dentistry with some of these outside forces being a very good thing for our industry?
Well, when I hear you ask that question, I'm thinking a lot of the kind of DSO roll up, as they call it, where private equity is investing more and more into dental. And so first of all, it's a percentage. The number of dentists involved in that kind of process is anywhere 20 to 25, just depends on who you ask, what kind of resource you look at. So it's definitely a large number, and it is growing. And some people, have negative views towards that. I personally come from more of that world, so I have a bit more of a positive view of it. But I think what that does is it is bringing this kind of different notion I mentioned before about efficiency to bear. And some of the previous kinds of iterations of private equity moving into the space have been to buy up more practices or grow through a de novo process, kind of get out there and get more offices. And now, the private equity backed DSOs are looking for ways to be more efficient. And so DIA and Cellerant are at a prime position to foster this kind of innovation and help get it deployed at those DSOs. And it also works in private practice, of course, but the multiplier effect within a DSO and just the sheer number of units being more efficient has a much bigger impact. So I that's how I take your question and kind of So, but I'd love to hear Doug's thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think you said that very well, Tom. And I think the specific headwinds that dental practices, whether they're solo practices, group practices, or large DSOs, in my 30 years, there never been more, I think, meaningful headwinds. Interest rates are high, patient demand is low, financing for patients is becoming more difficult, staffing shortages that come out of COVID. All of those things combined are making it very challenging doing dentistry the way it's been done for the last 30 years. And so you can look at other segments of healthcare that have innovated more quickly, and along with that same time, they've consolidated more quickly than dentistry until recently. And so now you have business teams within DSOs that are saying, hey, instead of let's go out and buy another 50 practices this year or open another 50 practices, let's take the 500 or 600 or 1,000 that I have and make them more profitable. And how do you do that? It's almost always technology. It can be better software, it can be better systems, it can be better devices, it can be better workflows. And we think we have a great visibility to all of those through the 1,000 or so companies that we've touched over the last couple of years.
You've both mentioned technology already, and obviously that's such a buzz right now in dentistry. And one thing that I'm seeing from this next generation of dentists and dental team members that are coming in is this embrace of technology, and really being excited about AI and everything else that there is out there when it comes to dentistry. Doug, I'm curious, what are you hearing from this next generation of dentists and dental team members about technology and how they feel like it's going to impact our industry?
I didn't grow up with a laptop computer and a cell phone,
Same.
right? it, it was a 10 key calculator. As I was a CPA early on, and that's how we process, and we wrote down things on yellow pads. So technology wasn't, through my career and Tom's career, obviously technology has exploded. Folks that are coming out of school and their undergrads and their professional programs, their whole life is built around technology. So they expect it. They're open to it. They demand it. Younger dentists are demanding as they go into their profession to have the latest technology. And for something that's maybe groundbreaking, we're looking at a company called Perceptive right now that basically it's a robot that preps the crown in a minute. Okay. Well, that's not something that's received very well by your, mid-career dentist who's been cutting crowns manually. And they're skeptical. That 27-year-old recent grad says, that's cool. That can make me more efficient. That can yield better patient results maybe than I can do by hand. And they're much more open to it. And I think that goes across the board. It's through systems and reducing the need to have manual processing by staff and practice, and have those people convert their time to patient-facing initiatives and activities that make the patient experience better. So,
And I think that's very well said. I would also add on there, we've mentioned this 1,000 companies in our CRM database, and it's growing quite quickly. So there is a morass, there's a huge cluster of innovation out there. So many options, all that optionality, all that abundance is confusing to people. And so I think one of our chief roles as DIA is to help people make sense of all that and to kind of find best in class solutions in a given vector. So what we've done, we've taken the universe of dental innovation and carved it up into roughly 40 vectors. And so we choose one to back, as an investment within that. But also we're analyzing the whole vector or sector, subsector in our due diligence process. So I think there's valuable intel that we gather. And as we go forward, we're creating something we're calling the DIA Inno Circle. And this Inno Circle is this kind of broader community idea. And the community is really embedded with end users. So from your private practice, single office doctor, all the way up to these apex DSOs, will have membership in this. And so it'll be a way to bring together the innovation with the end users and discuss a lot too in that process this kind of finding we've made by each subsector of dentistry. What do we think are the viable best solutions in there?
Well, I know there's so much we could discuss, and I know we have a limited amount of time today. So I want to make sure that our listeners know more about Dental Innovation Alliance. Where can they find out more information or reach out with questions or whatever that might be? Thomas, is there a way?
Sure. We have a website. It is www.dialliance.com. And that's the chief website for us. We have a key contact person we've been routing inquiries through. That's Tori Cockman. And so her email address is Tori, Tori, at that same dialliance.com address. So we'd love to hear from anyone who's interested. And there's a lot more we can tell you as we get into a further conversation.
Sounds great. We're going to make sure to put not only the website, but that email address in the show notes as well. And if you're reading this on drbicuspid.com, real easy way to hyperlink in the article. So, gentlemen, thank you both so much for the time, and I'm looking forward to seeing these innovations just continue to grow in our industry. And thank you both for what you're doing.
Appreciate the time, Kevin. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate the time.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of you who've listened to this episode of the drbicuspid.com podcast. Again, this is a continuation of our Cellerant CEO podcast series. I encourage you to go back and listen to some of the previous episodes where we're talking about some of this new technology that's coming in and talking to the people behind it as well. Until next time, it's Kevin Henry, Editor-in-Chief for Dr. Bicuspid, signing off, and as always, wishing you nothing but success ahead.